High Admiral Vorthak slammed his six-fingered fist against the command console, watching the holographic display flicker with what should have been impossible data. 17 ships. 17. Out of nearly 10,000 vessels that had departed from the Kethari Dominion just 3 rotations ago. Sir? Commander Xylef approached cautiously, her breathing slits fluttering with nervous energy. The final transmission logs are, well, they're quite disturbing. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in irritation. Define disturbing, Commander. Because watching 99% of our invasion fleet disappear into the void already qualifies as disturbing in my personal dictionary. The commander's scales shifted to a pale yellow, the Kethari equivalent of turning green around the gills. The humans, sir. They didn't fight the way our simulations predicted. Obviously. Vorthak's voice reverberated through the bridge, causing several junior officers to duck behind their stations. Our intelligence suggested they were a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. Simple carbon-based life forms with basic nuclear capabilities. What could possibly go wrong with that assessment? Xylef activated the holographic replay system, and the bridge fell silent as ghostly images of the invasion began to materialize above them. The initial wave looked exactly as planned, massive Kethari dreadnoughts emerging from hyperspace like metallic predators, their plasma cannons charging with deadly precision. Phase 1 proceeded according to protocol, Xylef narrated, her voice barely above a whisper. Our scouts had identified their major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Standard intimidation tactics were implemented. The hologram showed towering ships descending through Earth's atmosphere, casting shadows across human cities like mechanical eclipses. Vorthak watched with growing unease as the display captured what happened next. That's when things became unusual, Xylef continued. Instead of panic and surrender, the human cities erupted with activity. But not the kind of activity the Kethari had anticipated. Buildings began sprouting defensive structures faster than should have been physically possible. Streets rearranged themselves into maze-like patterns. And then the singing started. Singing? Vorthak's voice cracked slightly. You're telling me they responded to our invasion fleet with musical performances? Not just any singing, sir. Coordinated psychological warfare disguised as entertainment. Our pilots reported severe disorientation when exposed to something called "Never Gonna Give You Up," broadcast simultaneously from 17,000 radio stations. The hologram shifted to show Kethari fighters spinning helplessly through the atmosphere, their pilots clutching their hearing organs in apparent agony. Vorthak had to admit, even watching the replay was making his brain feel slightly fuzzy. But surely our ground forces managed better than our pilots, he asked, though the sinking feeling in his secondary stomach suggested otherwise. Xylef's scales turned an even more alarming shade of yellow. Sir, the humans had apparently been preparing for invasion for decades through something they call video games and science fiction movies. They knew exactly what to expect. The display now showed Kethari drop pods landing in what appeared to be empty fields, only to have the ground suddenly open up like gigantic trapdoors. Thousands of their finest warriors tumbled into elaborate underground networks filled with humans wielding improvised weapons and wearing peculiar costumes. Commander Zefix's final transmission was particularly enlightening, Xylef said, activating an audio file. Static filled the bridge before a panicked voice broke through. Command, this is Zefix. The humans have turned their entire underground transportation system into a fortress. They're using something called subway cars as mobile weapons platforms. And they keep shouting about the power of friendship while launching explosive devices that smell like, is that pizza? Command, I think they're enjoying this. Vorthak felt his primary heart skip several beats. Enjoying it? They were enjoying being invaded? It gets worse, sir. Captain Morlex reported that human children were collecting pieces of our destroyed equipment as souvenirs and trading them like valuable artifacts. Several of our soldiers were apparently talked into surrendering by something called Girl Scouts offering cookies. The holographic display showed a group of small humans in uniform approaching a squad of battle-hardened Kethari warriors. Within minutes, the aliens were sitting in a circle, apparently engaged in what looked suspiciously like a tea party. "Please tell me our aerial superiority held," Vorthak pleaded, though he already knew the answer from the commander's increasingly yellow complexion. "Sir, the humans weaponized their civilian aircraft. Commercial passenger jets began performing combat maneuvers that violated several laws of physics. And their military pilots." Xylef paused, her breathing slits practically sealed shut with stress. "They started playing something called Top Gun through our communication frequencies while executing impossible aerial stunts. The display showed sleek Earth fighters dancing through space between massive Kethari cruisers, their pilots apparently having the time of their lives while systematically dismantling ships 10 times their size. The audio picked up fragments of human chatter, negative, Ghost Rider, the pattern is full, followed by explosions and what sounded distinctly like laughter. And then there was the incident with the nuclear weapons," Xylef continued, her voice now barely audible. Vorthak's secondary heart stopped completely. "They used nuclear weapons against us?" "No, sir. They used them against asteroids to create improvised projectile weapons. Apparently, some human named Bruce Willis had given them the idea decades ago. They turned their own moon into a giant slingshot." The hologram showed Earth's moon suddenly sprouting massive mechanical structures, launching chunks of rock and ice at velocities that made Kethari physicists weep. Several dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, converted into their component atoms by impacts that registered on seismic equipment 3 star systems away. "But the most disturbing part," Xylef said, "was how they communicated with each other." "What do you mean?" "Sir, they have something called the Internet. Within 6 minutes of our arrival, they had created detailed tactical analyses of our ships, identified our weapons' weak points, and distributed this information to their entire population through something called memes." Vorthak stared at the display showing crude drawings of Kethari ships with arrows pointing to various components, accompanied by text that read, "Alien invasion boss fight, weak point guide, easy mode." "They turned our invasion into a game," he whispered. "Yes, sir. And apparently, they've been practicing." The final images showed the retreat, what remained of the mighty Kethari fleet limping away from Earth while human vessels followed at a respectful distance, occasionally broadcasting messages like, "Thanks for playing," and "Please come back anytime." Vorthak slumped in his command chair, all 6 of his arms hanging limp. 17 ships. Out of 9,900. How do we explain this to the High Council? Commander Xylef's scales had now achieved a shade of yellow so pale it was almost white. "Sir, there's one more thing. The humans sent a message. A surrender demand, I suppose?" "Not exactly, sir. They invited us to something called a block party next weekend. Apparently, they were impressed by our special effects and want to discuss a possible joint venture in what they call entertainment industry." Vorthak closed all 4 of his eyes and wondered if it was too late to transfer to the diplomatic corps. 3 standard rotations later, High Admiral Vorthak found himself doing something he never imagined possible, sitting in what humans called a lawn chair on the surface of Earth, wearing a ridiculous paper hat that read "Galaxy's Best Invader" in garish colors. "More potato salad, Admiral?" asked the human female who had introduced herself as Captain Emma Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force. She was grinning with the kind of terrifying enthusiasm that had apparently characterized humanity's entire response to the invasion. Vorthak's mandibles twitched nervously. "I still don't understand how we ended up here, Captain. My species has conquered 47 worlds using standard intimidation protocols. This..." He gestured weakly at the festive gathering around them. "This was not in any of our tactical manuals." Captain Rodriguez laughed, a sound that still made Vorthak's secondary heart skip. "That's because you guys made the classic mistake of assuming we'd react logically to an existential threat. Humans don't do logical, Admiral. We do spectacular." Around them, the so-called block party was in full swing. Human children were teaching young Kethari officers how to operate something called a slip-and-slide, while their parents shared grilled food with alien soldiers who had been trying to conquer them just days ago. The whole scene was so surreal that Vorthak wondered if he was experiencing some kind of neural breakdown. "Your people treated our invasion like entertainment," he said, still struggling to process the concept. "Our battle reports read like reviews of a summer blockbuster movie." "Oh, that reminds me." Captain Rodriguez pulled out a small device and showed him a screen filled with human text. "You guys are trending on social media. Look at this review, Kethari Invasion, 8 out of 10 stars. Great special effects, solid action sequences, but the plot was predictable. Aliens clearly didn't do their homework. Would recommend for family viewing." Vorthak's 4 eyes bulged. "They're rating our military campaign? The consensus seems to be that you needed better scriptwriters. Several humans have already submitted improved invasion scenarios to your remaining fleet commanders. Apparently, you should have started with a fake peace offering or tried biological warfare. Much more original, according to the comments." Commander Xylef approached, her scales now a confused mixture of yellow anxiety and purple bewilderment. She was carrying what appeared to be a small human child on her shoulders, both of them wearing matching friendship bracelets. "Sir," she reported, slightly out of breath, "I've been conducting reconnaissance on human defensive capabilities as you ordered." "And?" Vorthak asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "They don't have any, sir. Not in the traditional sense. Their entire defense strategy appears to be based on improvisation, social media coordination, and something called, wing it and see what happens. It's the most terrifying military doctrine I've ever encountered." The human child on Xylef's shoulders giggled and offered her a sticky candy. "Commander Xylef is funny. She keeps asking about our secret weapons, but we keep telling her we just make it up as we go along." Captain Rodriguez nodded seriously. "Little Maya here actually came up with the moon slingshot idea. She was playing a game called Angry Birds during the invasion and suggested we try the same principle with celestial mechanics." Vorthak felt his primary brain beginning to shut down from sheer cognitive overload. "A child? A child designed the weapon system that destroyed 3 of our dreadnoughts?" "Oh, that wasn't even her best idea," Rodriguez continued cheerfully. "She also suggested we hack your ship's entertainment systems and play Earth music until your crew surrendered from pure audio torture. Worked like a charm on Fleet Group 7. We don't have entertainment systems on our warships," Vorthak protested weakly. "You do now. Maya's older brother Jake is really good with computers. He installed them remotely during the battle. Your crews seem to enjoy the karaoke competitions, actually. Several of them asked for the playlist." As if summoned by the conversation, a teenage human approached carrying a tablet covered in technical specifications. "Hey, Admiral Vorthak. I've been analyzing your ship designs, and I have some suggestions for improvements." "Improvements?" Vorthak's voice cracked like a molting adolescent. "Yeah, your energy distribution is totally inefficient, and your hull plating has some serious weak points. But the biggest problem is your tactical AI. It's way too predictable. You need some randomness algorithms, maybe some machine learning protocols based on human gaming strategies." Jake showed him the tablet, which displayed detailed schematics of Kethari vessels with annotations like, "Add disco ball here for morale," and "Install better cup holders in bridge stations." "You want to upgrade our invasion fleet?" Vorthak asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sure. It'll be fun. Plus, if you're going to keep invading planets, you should at least do it with style. Your current approach is pretty amateur." Captain Rodriguez leaned back in her lawn chair, sipping something called lemonade from a glass decorated with tiny umbrellas. "That's actually why we invited you to stay, Admiral. We've been thinking about this whole invasion situation, and we've got a proposition for you." "A proposition?" Earth gets invaded about once every few years. Usually by species who've heard we're an easy target because we look primitive. It's becoming a real nuisance, honestly. All that cleanup, rebuilding, explaining to the media, it's exhausting. Vorthak's mandibles clicked nervously. I see. So we figured, why not partner with experienced invaders like yourselves? You've got the ships, the technology, the intimidating appearance. We've got the tactical creativity and the entertainment value. Together, we could turn planetary invasion into a proper industry. An industry? Jake looked up from his tablet excitedly. Think about it. Controlled invasion experiences for species who want the thrill without the actual danger. We could set up whole scenarios: zombie apocalypse, robot uprising, alien conquest. It would be like the ultimate theme park, but on a planetary scale. Little Maya clapped her hands from her perch on Commander Xylepha's shoulders. And we could have different difficulty levels. Easy mode for beginners, nightmare mode for the really advanced civilizations. Vorthak stared at them in growing horror. You want to turn warfare into recreational activity? Why not? Captain Rodriguez shrugged. We're already good at it. Might as well make some money while we're at it. Plus, it beats having actual invasions every few years. This way, everyone gets what they want, you get to feel like conquering heroes, we get to have fun defending our planet, and nobody actually dies. Commander Xylepha's scales had now shifted to a color that didn't exist in standard Kethari emotional spectrums. Sir, they're offering to let us invade them professionally. As a job. With benefits. Jake added. Health insurance, vacation time, employee discounts on Earth merchandise. We've even got a pension plan worked out. Vorthak looked around at the surreal scene, his officers playing volleyball with human children, eating strange food, wearing ridiculous clothing, and apparently having the time of their lives. In the distance, he could see the remaining 17 Kethari ships parked next to a sign that read, "Welcome galactic visitors, please register at information booth." This is insane, he muttered. That's the human way, Admiral. Captain Rodriguez raised her glass in a toast. To the most successful failed invasion in galactic history. As the sun set over Earth, painting the sky in colors that somehow seemed more vibrant than on any other world, Vorthak found himself raising his own glass of lemonade. Maybe, just maybe, this was better than conquering planets the traditional way. After all, where else in the galaxy could you find a species that responded to existential threats by throwing a party and offering career counseling to their would-be conquerors? To the humans, he said finally, his mandibles clicking in what might have been laughter. The most terrifying species in the universe, precisely because they're not trying to be. And somewhere in the distance, he could swear he heard the sound of his remaining crew members learning how to line dance.